a more difficult and heartbreaking project. For the first time ever, it truly was a matter of life and death. This is Dr. Shagun, founder of Hospitals for Humanity and the Saving Little Hearts program. They are on a mission to provide life-saving surgeries to children in Nigeria who suffer from heart disease.
The current sole purpose of Hospitals for Humanity is to treat as many children with congenital heart disease as possible. Heart disease stems from strep throat, and then that child will now have to have some type of surgery. And unfortunately, children in Africa, they're just not getting the level of care that other children around the world are getting.
All these children just need so much help, and Hospitals for Humanity is doing their best.
Hi. Is it kind of working? So you can see it. Which means if I hold it in. I took this, set it here like this. That way my phone. And it fell, of course. Hey Google, turn the light off. Kyle, is it working? What? Yes. You're able to see it though, right? Okay. There should be a delay, like quite a bit. Still watching?
Prends cette tablette Sheikah. Elle te montrera la voie après ton long sommeil.
Let's do this again.
Difference in the flavor. Japanese Wagyu tends to be richer and fattier, meaning it's easier to eat larger quantities of the American stuff than the Japanese. And that is definitely intentional. American Wagyu is bred with Angus, so it can be meatier and can be sold in larger quantities, which translates to less fat. Australian Wagyu, because of the crossbreeding they've done with their own cows, is something of an in-between here. It's not as meaty as the American variety, but decidedly less buttery than the Japanese kind. Japanese Wagyu cows are also raised for longer, around 3 years or more compared to the US's 18 months. Again, a small difference that adds up to a largely different eating experience. But really, we're kind of arguing a moot point across all of this, because the last nail in the coffin, the thing that tells you that almost all Wagyu is a lie, is the fact that restaurants don't even have to listen to regulations at all. They can call whatever beef they want Wagyu. Honestly, they could call the beef whatever they want. Case in point, a subset of Wagyu beef called Kobe. You might have heard of Kobe beef before. If Wagyu is like the Mercedes-Benz of beef, then Kobe is like the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. It is considered to be the top tier of the brand, the best of the best. It's also, fun fact, where the late great Kobe Bryant got his name. His parents saw it at their favorite restaurant and thought it sounded good. True story. Now, officially, Kobe beef can only come from the Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. In fact, to be officially labeled as Kobe in Japan, the cattle have to meet 7 separate standards when it's being slaughtered. And these criteria are strict, including things like being from a virgin cow at the time of slaughter. It has to have been born and raised in the prefecture. Its age and weight have to fall within certain boundaries at the time of slaughter, and also there's a mandatory high BMS rating. Kobe beef needs to score a marbling rating of 6 or higher on that 12-point scale, meaning that you're never gonna find an A3 Kobe beef. Now, as you might guess, with these high standards, only a few thousand cattle qualify as Kobe every year, roughly 3,000 to 5,000. And what's then imported to the US is only enough for 77 Americans' annual meat consumption. Not 77,000, 77. And yet dozens of restaurants are peddling Kobe sliders, Kobe hot dogs, and all of them are about as real as the Easter Bunny. So why is it that no one's stopping these restaurants from their bold-faced lies? Again. Well, honestly, it's because no one in the US has to. Where Kobe beef is a registered trademark in Japan, the US, yeah, they don't recognize that trademark, which means that any old restaurant or fast food joint like Arby's or McDonald's, if they wanted to, could legally claim any meat as Kobe beef if they just wanted to overcharge you for it. They're just banking on customers not knowing any better and thinking that if it says Kobe beef on the menu, then it has to be Kobe beef. It's a pretty shady practice for a restaurant, but it can also be a pretty profitable one, considering it can make the difference between a $20 steak and an $80 one. The only line that restaurants aren't allowed to cross is to claim that they're selling the genuine article, real Kobe beef from Japan. There have been several class action lawsuits against restaurants on that particular basis. It is a murky line at best, considering that Kobe beef technically has to come from Japan, but not all consumers know that. In reality, there's only 8 authorized retailers in the US of Kobe beef. 8. And only 37 restaurants in the entire country have the certification to sell Kobe. Guess you could say that it's pretty rare. But perhaps the most ironic part of all of this are the dishes where Wagyu and Kobe are being shoved into. More often than not, you're seeing restaurants advertising things like Wagyu burgers, pizza, and hot dogs. But remember, a large part of the experience of the Wagyu is the texture and fattiness. By grinding the meat up to make a patty or shoving it into a casing, you absolutely destroy the marbling and texture that makes that meat so differentiated, so valuable. And then on top of that, all that flavorful fat, you're smashing it down into the griddle or the grill and melting it away before the deliciousness ever reaches your mouth. It'd be like buying a Ferrari just to drive it around in school zones. Which is why, in general, if you're seeing these meats advertised in anything other than a steak form, be wary. Best case, they're using the correct ingredient, they're just not doing it correctly. Worst and more likely case, it means they're just using fancy terminology to upcharge you for basically the same thing. So clearly, while there is a reason why these meats have earned some ridiculously high price tags, it's all been undercut by a lack of regulation and quality control. This has led to confusion in the market and advertisers desperate to use fancy words to get you to spend a few extra bucks on their fast food burger patty. What can qualify as Kobe beef is tiny compared to the demand for it. But because of the prestigious reputation and the name instantly elevating a dish's cost, restaurants actively lie and call regular cheap beef Kobe so they can upcharge you just by using the name. So the next time you find yourself perusing a menu and find Wagyu tacos and Kobe sliders, trust me, it's not worth your time, your money, or your appetite. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit.
Than the other ones because I added literally every detail, because if we're being honest, that's what Fred and George deserve. Before we start, I want to make this very clear. This video is based on the books, not the movies. There is a huge difference, and you'll see just how big that difference is when I go through their life. If you've only seen the films, you're about to hear a completely different story for the twins. That being said, though this is based on the books, as always, I'm going to use clips from the movies just to make it more visually pleasing for you guys. Also, there are obviously going to be spoilers. Now that that's out of the way, let's get this video started. Fred and George were twins who were born on April 1st, 1978 to Arthur and Molly Weasley. Their birthdays being on April Fool's Day would perfectly predict the jokesters that they would later become. Fred was born first and George followed minutes later. Like their parents and the rest of their siblings, they had bright red hair and freckles. They were the fourth and fifth Weasley children, having 3 older brothers, Bill, who was almost 8 years older than them, Charlie, who was almost 6 years older than them, and Percy, who was 2 years older than them. Later on in life, they would have 2 more younger siblings, Ron, who was 2 years younger than them, and their one and only sister, Ginny, who was 3 years younger than them. Unlike in the movies where the twins were tall and lanky, in the books they were actually shorter and stockier like their brother Charlie. Because the Weasleys had so many kids, they struggled financially, meaning that almost all of Fred and George's clothes and belongings were hand-me-downs. They grew up in the Burrow, the home of the Weasley family, and the twins shared a room on the 2nd floor. Explosions from their room would happen so often that it was considered to be quite normal. When Fred was 5 years old, a 3-year-old Ron broke his toy broomstick, so to get back at him, he turned Ron's teddy bear into a huge spider, which was actually the start of Ron's terrible fear of spiders. Another time, the twins tried to get Ron to make an unbreakable vow when he was 5, which if you break, you die. Mr. Weasley caught them before they could do it though, and they said it was the only time they had seen their father get as angry as their mother. He ended up spanking the twins, and later on, Fred joked that his left butt cheek had not been the same since. On another occasion, Fred gave a 7-year-old Ron an acid pop, and it burned a hole right through his tongue. This made Mrs. Weasley furious, and she hit Fred with her broomstick. Growing up, the twins were forced to do chores in the garden, one of which was de-gnoming the gardens, and while doing this, they taught the gnomes that came around the Burrow a bunch of swear words. Their Auntie Muriel used to come over every Christmas, but after the twins set off a dung bomb under her chair at dinner, she refused to come for Christmas anymore, and Mr. Weasley was convinced that she wrote the twins out of her will because of this. The twins ended up losing 3 uncles in their childhood, one of which was Muriel's husband, Uncle Bilious, who died after seeing the Grimm. And they also lost their uncles on their mother's side, Fabian and Gideon Pruitt. Fabian and Gideon died like heroes fighting off Death Eaters, and seeing this made Fred and George see how dangerous the world out there was. It wasn't all just jokes and laughs. Having older brothers, Fred and George learned to fly and play Quidditch at a young age, trying to keep up with Bill and Charlie in their backyard, and they became very good. After turning 11 in April, they got their Hogwarts letters the following summer. They headed to school with their brothers Charlie and Percy, and like the rest of their family, they were sorted into Gryffindor. They became friends with fellow Gryffindor Lee Jordan, who was also in their year, and he became the twins' best friend. Fred and George quickly became known for their antics, and though they would get a lot of points taken off for Gryffindor, most didn't care because they were making everyone around them laugh, and also because they were pretty popular and everybody wanted to be their friend. Despite being jokesters, according to Ron, the twins actually got pretty good grades, which not a lot of people know. Fred and George immediately began to explore the castle, and in their first week there, they discovered a secret passageway behind a statue of Gregory and Smarmy. The twins quickly caught the attention of the caretaker Argus Filch, and he wrote them up many times. So many times in fact that they had an entire drawer of write-ups to themselves. One time when running from Filch, they passed the Room of Requirement, the room that turns into whatever you need at that point in time, and for them, it turned into a broom cupboard, and they hid in there to escape from Filch. Another time during their first year, after setting off a dung bomb, they were taken to Filch's office, and there they saw a piece of parchment in a cabinet labeled confiscated and highly dangerous. The young Fred and George knew that they had to have it, so George set off another dung bomb while Fred stole it. Now, one of the most common questions I get asked is how Fred and George learned to open the map, because obviously you need a specific phrase to open it. Luckily for us, Rowling actually answered that. She said that they tried many word combinations, and because the map knew they really were up to no good, the map helped them, flickering into life as they got closer and closer until they finally hit upon the exact right word combination.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
With the Marauder's map, Fred and George discovered all sorts of secrets, like the 7 secret passageways in and out of the castle, where the kitchens were, which of course led them to the discovery of tickling the pear to open the entrance to it so that they could steal food. The map also helped to make sure they didn't get caught while doing many things, because they could see where Filch and any other teachers were at any given moment.